and welcome to this week's InConversation, in which I talk to people in the Northeast dynamic and exciting cybersecurity industry. My name's Phil Jackman, and I lead on CyberNorth, Dynamo Northeast cybersecurity cluster, supported by Accenture and the Innovation Super Network. We're part of the new UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration, or UKC3, which is bringing all the cyber clusters across the country together. And we're recognised by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the National Cybersecurity Centre as representing the region. Today, I'm joined by an old friend, Graham Jordan, manager in this instance of ISNorthEast. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. So can we start with you tell us a bit about yourself and the various roles that you have across the region?
Yeah, sure. I started in local government in about 1991, and I was working in a policy and research role at Tyne Passenger Transport Authority, and that's now morphed into Transport Northeast. I've always sort of worked in a multi-agency role, and I got into IT through a research project for the European Commission to put bus timetables onto teletext, if anybody can remember that. That was led by Northumbria Uni and involved the private sector, and typically we got into all sorts of European projects after that. And partway through, the internet came along, and a new unit was established at Newcastle Council, which was where the Transport Authority was based, to look at new ways of working for the council. And I've been pretty much doing that since. One of the things, my main role now is to support council heads of IT in the region to look at new challenges collectively rather than multiple times over and them each doing it separately. And as part of that, I manage the Sockerdom Northeast group that brings together the region's public sector heads of IT and ISNorthEast, the security network, which I think we're going to explore a bit more, yeah?
Yes, I mean, I'm talking today from a cyber security perspective. Then, so what is ISNorthEast?
Well, ISNorthEast is one of a number of warning, advice, and reporting points. It's a bit of a mouthful, but they get called warps. And there's a number of warps across the country, not just for local government. There's a police warp, there's a housing warp, and things like that. But essentially, it's a peer support network for IT security colleagues. And we find that especially useful because the teams are typically very small, and unlike other sectors, we don't have what you could call a local gov SOC. We've got over 40 member organisations as part of ISNorthEast. That's from councils, universities, college groups, government agencies, blue light operations as well. So we've got quite a diverse background, which is really interesting. Every warp has a different operating model. We don't charge a membership fee for ours, for example. And our membership's open to any public sector organisation in the Northeast, but others are run on a slightly different basis. Depends ultimately where they're funding themselves from.
Okay, so I mean, the public sector is very important to the Northeast region, but what do members get from ISNorthEast? And is there any interaction between, say, the non-technical teams, such as business continuity?
Yeah. I suppose when you think about it, we do share a lot of each other's customers. If you think about, the ambulance service, health, local authorities, and what we have there is we've got a trusted environment for our member organizations and the individuals from that to consider new developments, ask for help, ask for opinions, share experience, offer support, and crucially what we've got in there is a virtual, what we call a big red button, so you can hit the big red button and broadcast a warning or an alert, hence the warning element of the warp sort of name, and that sends those out to everybody, a bit like a neighborhood watch. In terms of the business continuity stuff, we've got links into the local resilience community. So that's the emergency planners and the councils and the local resilience forums within the region. That's probably another story for another day.
Indeed. So is there any interaction with other national bodies, other warps, the National Cybersecurity Centre, for example?
Yeah, we've got good links in our own right, but there's also a national sort of network of warps that meets together regularly. We're meeting monthly at the moment. In the first lockdown, we were meeting every fortnight, just to make sure that cyber was being addressed and ticking over. So we've got really good links into the National Cybersecurity Centre, the Regional Cybercrime Unit. Our own sort of reporting line is through the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Also the Cabinet Office, where the resilience team lives, and Local Government Association, which, if you like, is our sort of trade body for the councils, brings together the councils, does a lot of training and awareness work across there, and that looks at things like people and process rather than technology. And so they're all brought together at a national level, but at a more local level, I suppose, we work really well with our friends in the Northwest and the Yorkshire and Humber warps, and we've recently had a conference with them and things like that. So we're often working with them.
Okay, so you and I have known each other a long time, since I think I first joined public sector, which was well years ago. So for those outside, can you give us a flavour of the scale and scope of local authorities?
Yeah, well, we're a little bit different in the Northeast. The other regions going through the same sort of thing, but 2009, Northumberland was condensed into one single authority, and Durham was the same. So we only have 12 councils in the Northeast, and they're all what we would call like single tier. So there are no district councils in the Northeast. The councils that you recognise the names of do everything, if you like. And if you think of sort of one of the reasonable size ones, we've probably got about 200,000 customers, probably about 5,000 staff, 80 people working in IT. A big one might have 5 people in IT security. Used to have maybe 40 odd service departments at Gateshead. So in terms of business applications, you get something like 200 line of business applications. And at Gateshead, where I'm physically based when I'm there, obviously pandemic wise working at home, but we've got 200 interfaces just to the finance system. So it gives you an idea of the scale of the IT operation within what is a large, complex organization.
Yeah, some of the largest organisations that are in the region. But you mentioned the pandemic there, and that must have had an enormous effect upon the local authorities. Like how the number also hit by cyber attacks recently. Are there any parallels in managing the fallout from both those cyber and COVID?
Yeah, there've been quite a few high-profile cyber attacks on councils round about the same sort of time as the pandemic. As you'd expect, there's been lessons learned shared across the sector, and there's been a lot of activity really to help stop other councils being hit in a similar way. Government had already rated cyber and any pandemic in its top 4 risks for the council emergency teams to work, and concentrate on, alongside the other 2 being environmental and terrorism. So it was already on the chart, if you like, alongside pandemic and stuff like that. And we're working closer than ever now with the NCSC and the local emergency planners. I think the key parallel is probably that it still all ends up being about the impact on your business. How quickly could you get back to some sort of normal, and what would you provide in the meantime? How can you keep the lights on and keep the service going to the customers? In some of the high-profile attacks, though, that happened prior to the pandemic, or just about as the pandemic was happening, and then others, there've been a couple since involving councils. The IT systems were off for months. We're not just talking about things being down for a matter of days, and some of the data or some of the systems never came back. So, we need to have our business and service departments rehearsed in terms of what they would do in if you like, when a scenario when there's all the IT's gone.
Oh dear me, no IT. But some of these systems are life critical, as the social care systems, the children's systems, those systems. But you've said to me in the past that the National Cybersecurity Centre focuses on the technical issues, while the police tend to focus on the criminal aspects. What does the local authority, then need to focus on?
Yeah, I think again, it's not just councils. We've got wider than the councils involved within the warp, but it's the impact on the business, and you can lose your IT for reasons other than criminal or technical, and we've seen that with staff availability in the pandemic is one example of that, and then other councils either in the region or beyond where they've had fires or floods and things like that in the past. The impact still, somebody gets a call over a mobile phone because the telephones are gone, presumably, get a call from the head of IT saying, the systems are going to be down for a period of X days, X weeks, or hopefully just this afternoon we've got a few things, we'll bounce them back up and we'll get things back and running. But yeah, I think that's the big thing. And I think beyond that technical bit, outside of ITs, the councils and the business units really, the key thing is the people and processes. That's where the mistakes can be made. If you think about business email compromise and things like that. And when people get asked to pay accounts quickly and things like that, it's a lack of awareness plus a little bit of pressure on. Somebody makes a mistake and the bad guys are in. And you'll have seen that in other sessions that you organised in either CyberNorth or in your InConversations. But it's a bit like sort of being polite and holding the doors open so somebody can walk in the office and then pitch a PC or sensitive information in a folder on the desk. Because again, it's not necessarily all about the IT stuff. Amongst all of this is the folder of sensitive information on the desk. It's the paper records, and you've got to think, how would you look after your paper records, and are you doing the same level of sort of diligent support and security for your electronic records? And really, it's all about culture, and we need to change the culture from one of trust, where you trust that person that you're holding the door open is an ally, sort of thing. And all the tech in the world can't really fix the culture side of things.
Yeah, so cybersecurity is such a people issue, not just a technical issue. But look, you work in a hugely complex organization. I know I've worked in them myself, with many different priorities and many different people pulling on you at all times, not to say the enormous financial pressure that you've been under. How do you keep a focus on cybersecurity within the council?
Yeah, there's a constant challenge on resources, especially through the pandemic, where everybody's become more reliant on IT, and that IT has to be available, keep information confidential, and staff need the confidence that the systems and data haven't been compromised. So in terms of the availability, the confidentiality, the confidence that they haven't been compromised, that's the three pillars of IT security: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CIA that people keep talking about. But where I sit in the organization, from there I can flag learning from experience elsewhere, try to ensure that national developments take into account our local needs and nuances. So if somebody's developing something and it's a very, let's say, district council focused thing that's coming nationally, I can remind people that we don't have district councils and that we've got all of the functions. And years ago, when we were looking at things to do with European research and developments there, it was almost said in market terms when we had a much more complex market for public services than a lot of other European countries, where things were all still run by the state. And it was often said, well, if it'll work in such and such a complicated area, it'll work anywhere. And we just need to make sure that those little nuances and things get through there. But in terms of what's happened recently, there've been some really good messages, and we'll talk about those lessons learned. They've been put in an accessible format. We've got videos now, access to those, where one chief exec is talking largely in the in layman's terms, not in technical terms, about what happened during their cyber attack and things like that. And they're addressing our leadership team, our leader, our chief exec, and said, this is what happened to us. It could happen to you. It went. We lost all of the IT. It took months to get back. It had a big impact on the service and the public and the staff, which is often that people don't realise. You've got members of staff losing access to work that's taken years to build up, to data that's taken years to work up, and in the meantime, that cost the council perhaps tens of millions of pounds. So that learning is where we can make the case for investment in either business continuity, investment in tech, investment in security measures and things like that.
Excellent. Right, I'm on to my last question, which is the same question I ask everybody on these. Is, so our world has been turned upside down this year. Clearly yours has. What are your hopes for the future, Graham?
I think we're less compartmentalized than we used to be, and I think the key thing for me is we've got to keep talking with one another. Make friends now, so you know when you call, who you call when there's a problem. It's almost like, at home, have you got the plumber's number on the back of the kitchen cupboard door, sort of thing. Who you going to ring when you've got a problem? So make your friends now. Keep learning. The lessons learned from the incidents are floating around. That's all there, so you can try to avoid making some of the same have some of the same impact, I would say. And it's got to go back. You've got to think about its impact focus. It's like, what do you do when you walk back in on the Monday morning? And it's like, if you're in a building and the fire alarm goes off, you know to get out. You know what to do. If you discover a fire, you look for the red box on the wall and you smash the glass. We need that same sort of thinking and level of awareness. And by keep sharing the experience and knowledge, And I think the other thing, which I know is hard because it seems to get in the way of business as usual, but I think we've got to keep practicing. We've got to run drills. We've got to rehearse this stuff. We've got to do things like, if we're migrating a system or installing a new system, maybe we not be in there for a few days and say, well, how are you going to manage? Well, it's just going to come straight on, is it? Well, what if it didn't? And then you've got your, if you like, back to pens and paper, because that's probably the way you're going to do it. And then you've got that as your standby way of continuing to operate your service in the future, should you need to go back to that other way of doing it. So, yeah, keep
It's
talking.
excellent. No, that's great. I think make your friends now, and cybersecurity is business as normal. Okay, thanks very much for that, Graham. That's been excellent. I'd also like to thank Robert Campbell, who's in the background. He always helps me set up these InConversations. Look out for the next now series. And don't forget, September is Cyberfest. We've got 14 events this year, starting on the 7th of September, and I hope to see you all there. Thanks, Graham.
That's great. Thanks, Phil.
That was In Conversation with Phil Jackman, lead for CyberNorth. Audio and video production was by me, Robert Campbell. This was a Team Funds production for Dynamo Northeast.